Hey you guys, it's Rachel here with Senza Tempo Corso. Long time no see. So figured I would introduce my new puppy to y'all. It's been a while. I've had him for a bit. He's not a secret. I've had him on Facebook, but haven't had the time to do a video. And but I thought I would, and for no other reason than I do feel an obligation to share what I've learned about the straw coloration, which is what he is. As many of you know that have been watching for a while, I've talked about straw before. There was this whole controversy with another breeder that had a dog they were trying to say was straw that wasn't straw. And anyway, this is a straw dog, and I had talked about what it looked like, but I didn't know the genetics behind it. As you guys know, I've never been an expert on genetics, on color genetics. I've never tried to be. It wasn't really something that interests me a whole lot. In fact, it was kind of intimidating for me. I was like intimidated by the Punnett square, whatever it's called, the Punnett square. And math has never been easy for me. I have my father was very dyslexic and couldn't read, and I think I have this thing, they call it dyscalculia, I think it's called, but basically math is very hard for me. And just the way that my brain works, it's just extremely hard. And for whatever reason, I associated genetics with math. There's something in it where my brain just wanted to do that. But as I've gotten older and my brain has matured, these concepts have gotten a little bit easier for me to understand. And so when the story behind this dog, I've named him Butterbean. Now Butterbean is actually mostly my lines. His father is Hefe, who you guys know that I produced. And I sold him to a breeder in North Carolina. And then, which I still technically co-own him. And then I sold a daughter of my grand champion, Nirvana, which is a sister to Kimchi, to that same breeder. And she bred that female to an import male that is heavy. It's Custodinos and Deldirium, which you guys know I'm a big Dirium fan, Vito and DeViri. And so she bred that female to that import male, and then she took a female off of that, which was straw. So the import male named Alpha, the Dirium boy, he carries the gene for this color because it's a recessive gene. So in order for a straw color to be produced, or puppy to be produced, both parents need to carry the gene. So that import male carried it, as well as Kimchi's sister, and that produced a straw female that was then put to Hefe, which produced this puppy. So he's 3/4 my lines. Pardon me. So I had let her know that if she had any straw dogs, that I wanted one. It was coming out of my lines anyway, and I was like, heck, I want one. I don't care. And for me, it didn't matter. For me, it's more of in a way, when you do what I do, it's these oddities, these rarities become you become a collector. You know what I mean? You not like you have a ton of dogs, but what I mean is when you have something unique like that, you want to hold on to it. And so for me, what are you chewing on? For me, it didn't matter whether or not I could breed him or not. I didn't care about that. Or if I could show him or whatever. I just wanted one. I didn't care what anybody thought about it. So then whenever I got him, just out of curiosity, I was like, all right, well, let me read the standard. So I'll tell you now, and then I'll pause this video, or I'll stop this video, insert the standard, and then you can read it for yourself. So the standard says that acceptable colors are fawn, both lighter and darker shades of fawn, and red and lighter and darker shades of red. And it does separate those two. And it specifically states darker and lighter shades of both, of fawn and red. Now, historically, because we knew that red was in our pedigree, and we knew that a mask was required, we thought that red was dark fawn, or like a heavy carbonated fawn. And as you guys know, that's what I've always said. Well, it's not true. In our standard, it states lighter and darker shades of fawn. So it covers that, and that's not red. Red is very specific. Red is, I believe it's called, the gene is recessive red. I think it's little e/e. And it is basically the inability to produce black pigment in the hairs. So, I'm not going to claim to know a ton about the way that it works or the mechanism that it works, but I do know the genetic signature. I do know the mode of inheritance, which is recessive. So both parents need to have it, need to carry the gene to produce it. And I do know that it is responsible for the red coloration. It is what you know of as red. Okay, when you see a red dog, like for example, golden retrievers come in a cream color like him, and then they come in a very dark shade of red, and they can even be a more wheat color in the middle. But it's all the same gene. It's E/E. Come here. I believe it's E/E. I'm sitting here saying this stuff, but who knows? I should have. I do these things where I do these impulse videos, but I'm pretty sure. But anyway, pardon me. I've been sick. So ultimately, when you are referring to a red dog, that is the gene that you are referring to. So when our standard says red and lighter and darker shades of red, that's what they're referring to. There is no other red to refer to. And you do see it in our dogs, right? Like that's why this color exists. Now, what separates a dark red from a light red is known as an intensifier. It's the eye. And so like if you wanted to breed really dark red colored dogs, then you would want to focus on those because they have the same intensifier. And the same thing with the straw. Now, within Butterbean's litter, there were various shades. He's not the lightest. There were some that had almost no cream in there. They did have some. They weren't white, but they're very close to it. And then there were some that were much darker that probably, I don't know that people would have even identified as straw. They would have probably thought, oh, that's a maskless fawn. And so what I can tell you is that there are a lot of dogs that are this same gene, just not the same intensifier, that are in our breed that nobody bats an eye at, okay? That are these very just dark red dogs with no mask. And it's very difficult to separate, or even it would be impossible to identify, other than these guys, the red dogs from these dark maskless, or just these dark reds. It's very hard to separate them visually from like genetically, like, you know, dark fawn dogs without a mask. So what's interesting is that our standard does say that both fawn and red dogs have a mask, but it is genetically impossible for a red dog to have a mask because by definition they cannot produce black pigment in the hairs. So they can't produce a mask, which is why there's always been these maskless red dogs that, you know, and I'll be honest with you, like you do see it a lot in American lines. Whenever I was doing my research and I was just going under fawn dogs in database, trying to see how many maskless fawns or how many maskless, you know, red dogs that I could find. And then I was just like taking screenshots of all of them. And there was a ton back in the day in the American lines, like a ton of them. Which makes sense because Rottweilers don't carry masks and neither do Neapolitan Mastiffs. So, and which is what American lines are primarily mixed of. So it makes sense that a lot of those dogs wouldn't have masks. But when you're looking at those dark red dogs from those American lines, it would be almost impossible, just from a visual aid, to be able to separate them sometimes whenever you're looking at them. Just, like you'd need to do the genetic testing on them to see. And so what I'm saying is that the only difference genetically between him and a lot of dogs that nobody would even be concerned about or bat an eye at is the intensifier in his genetic expression. So it's not the red that is the problem, it's the intensifier. And I guess if you wanted to, you could say, well, don't breed these ones. But the truth is, in our standard, it says, and lighter and darker shades of both. So that would imply that light red, which is this cream color, that is the lightest expression of red, that this would be allowed. The only issue is the requirement of a mask, which, mind you, in our standard, is not a fault or a disqualification. And let me go ahead and insert the standard here. You can check up what I said. So as you can see, it says solid fawn and red, and lighter and darker shades of each. So it's separate, you know what I mean? It separates the fawn and the red. So that's why we do have a grand champion straw Corso. A lot of people don't know that. I can't tell you how many times I get people in the comment section of a picture that I post of him, where people will say that he's a disqualification, that he's not recognized. That very much is an online-only myth. It's not true. And like I said, we do have an AKC Grand Champion straw dog. Come here. Oi! Butterbean, where you going? Butterbean! Oh, he's a stubborn dog. Look at him, not even paying attention to me. He's spoiled. So if they weren't recognized, then AKC would not, you wouldn't be able to show them. Okay, I'm just going to be honest with you. The people in the show world they will report you. They'll go right up and report you, and they'll have to look at the rule book, but they have to go by the rules. They don't go by online theory. They don't go by, Butterbean. No. You quit. All right, so I'm going to do what I do best, and I'm going to walk away from him because he's being a jerk. He thinks he's going to run stuff, and I'm not going to chase him. Yeah, exactly, punk. So, anyway, so the online chatter, where does it come from, right? Where does it come from? Well, it comes from the fact that in Europe, in Italy, they don't like the straw dogs. They have... I believe the straw is a disqualification in Europe. So there is that, but we don't go by the European standard. You know what I mean? And what I will say is that a lot of the people making hoopla, as far as I'm concerned, it's like, okay, if you have an issue with people breeding this color, then you seem to think that you have very strong ethics. Okay, well, and I really hope you have 0 American lines in your pedigrees. I really hope that if you did have American lines, that you've at least moved away from them and no longer use them, and have washed your pedigrees with European blood to clean it out, because God forbid, how are you going to have an opinion about a color that is known to exist in the breed and has historical relevance and is authentic to the breed, and yet you're breeding mixed breed dogs? I don't think you really have a leg to stand on. So, I'd advise you that if you have American lines, if you're working with American lines, that you pipe down a little bit, because you are not the one to be speaking to other people about the rights and wrongs of breeding Corso. Now, this is the way that I see it. It also says in our standard that the masks should not go beyond the eyes. So if his only flaw, since he's allowed to be red, because like I said, if he was a dark red color, nobody would be throwing a fit. Okay? Nobody would be throwing a fit about it. plenty of dark red dogs without masks that have been shown, are probably out there showing now. I mean, it exists. Even dogs, brindle dogs with no mask. Like, a lot of people don't know this, but Batista does not have a mask, and he is a brindle dog, but he does not have a mask. If people really went through and noticed just how many dogs don't actually have a mask, you'd be pretty surprised. But blue dogs don't have a mask. You know what I mean? I mean, but not that you can see, obviously. But my point being that, you know, it's a color, right? To me, color is a minor fault. I'll give you another example, like brindle pointing. Okay, somebody sent me a European champion recently that has brindle pointing, and over here in America, you can breed dogs that have brindle pointing. And basically, what that is it's the same genetics that make Rottweilers have their tan points, but the tan pointing is covered with brindle. And because, oh, look at him, structure. See, and that's what I'm saying. He's a really good-looking dog in general, having nothing to do with the color. But but anyway, the brindle covers the tan points, and therefore you get this brindle pointed dog. And because Corso do carry a mask, more often than not, you don't get a lot of it in the face, not so much in the cheeks. Like, it's not as prevalent. On a Corso, it can often be, the markings can be somewhat disguised, but you will still see it in the feet of the dog. And genetically, that is no different than tan pointing, except for the fact that it just has brindle covering it. But if you are working with brindle pointing, you can just as easily be producing tan pointing. So if you have a problem with the pointing gene, if you don't want to produce tan points, then you shouldn't be working with the brindle pointing either. I mean, me personally, I don't see, to me, it just seems weird. And in reality, it creates this byproduct, right? These tan pointed byproduct dogs that ultimately are a disqualification, that cannot be used because people continue to work with the brindle pointing. Because you could just easily get away from pointing in general by not breeding any pointed dogs and genetically testing everything you're working with and ensuring that, you know, you're not working with any pointing, and then you could do that, right? It would be fine. But if you allow people to work with brindle points, then you're still going to have pointing. It's just, you're not removing that. So it's kind of a weird thing to me. It's one of these things that for me just doesn't make sense. So I don't know if when our standard was made, if we knew about the genetics behind red, and if they knew that red dogs genetically could not produce a mask. I know that a lot of the dogs that are red get away with it because of the black pigment that shows up through the skin around the face. So they'll call that a mask. And I guess if you want to do that, no, Butterbean, no. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Come on. So I guess if you wanted to call that skin that's peeking through on his lips right there, and as he grows and that gets thinner and thinner, and it'll look more and more like a mask, I guess you could say that's a mask. And that's what a lot of people with those red dogs do. And when they show them, some of them, not all of them, some of them will use chalk to kind of darken the mask a little bit. I had all kinds of things that people told me to do with Nirvana, like even using like a hair dye, like a men's kind of hair dye thing that's not as like saturating or whatever. But anyway, just tricks that people do just to deepen the mask or whatever, make the dog look better. But anyway, to me, it's all a bunch of bananas, for lack of a term that I'd rather use. I think it's nonsense. I don't care how anyone feels about it. I've been doing this long enough that I've stopped really caring what everybody thinks. The only people I care about are like my best friend Reese, who's also a breeder of Corso, used to be my mentor, but he's no longer with us. And he was actually starting to work with the straw dogs too. He didn't care either. He got to this point where he just didn't care either. And so, you know, the thing is that if they want to remove these dogs, the ability to produce these dogs, then, you know, they can update the standard if they want to do that. But, you know, like I said, I mean, I think it should be based in science, not just on a a dislike for this particular color, because this particular color is not just this color. This is a variety, one expression of a very wide-ranging color. And to just say that we don't like this light shade, but we like the other shades of red, to me, is just, I don't know, it doesn't make much sense to me. But then again, you know, dog breeding, when it comes to standards, rarely does. They're always like party poopers. They just want to remove all the fun colors, it feels like. But, you know, it is what it is. Butterbean is here. He's, as it stands now, is not a disqualification, is perfectly applicable for show. Actually, he's a super nice dog. So as long as he passes his health certs like every other dog I've ever had, you know, that's what he'll be doing. And if we produce straw, awesome. If we don't, awesome. It doesn't matter to me. You know, I haven't color tested all of my dogs to see if they carry it or not. It wasn't the thing for me. I just wanted a straw dog for myself. I knew that my lines were producing it, and I was like, you know what I mean? Like, why do they get to have all the fun? You know what I'm saying? Like, if this is what my stuff is producing, I want something off of it. I mean, this dog goes back to my foundation stuff on both sides of his pedigree. So he's line bred, and not too heavily, even though it kind of feels like that. I thought so at first, but when I actually looked at his pedigree, it's not that bad. Nowhere near like a lot of the stuff that you see, and it's just not that bad, particularly because all of the dogs that went into him were outcrosses. So there wasn't a lot of line breeding to begin with. But needless to say, I think he's very indicative of my stuff. He looks like Hefe, Nirvana, you know, he looks like all that stuff. He's got a lot of bone. He's a big dog. He's got a lot of substance. He does this face thing that my stuff does out of that. They do this kind of like a grimace in a way, like a smile where they show their teeth. What you doing? I'll try to get him to do it, but I can get Kimchi to do it, and Smurf can do it on cue. No, he's not gonna do it yet. Anyway, I try to teach all of them to do it, but yeah, I mean, you know, I love him. I feel very fortunate to have him. And if you don't know who he's named after, Butterbean is a pretty famous boxer back in the day, and he's not my first dog that's named after a fighter. I do have a Fedor as well. Super nice dog. Fedor is very nice, but for short, I call him Beans or Bean, not Butters. Reese has a habit of trying to call him Butters, and I can't stand it. I have a Butters, or I had a Butters already, and I gave him away to some people that had a Corso from me years ago. Butterbean, you baby boy. Give you kisses on the nose. He is a punk, like all my stuff. He's smart and stubborn, and but that's how I like him. So anyway, I'll talk to y'all later. Like I said, I don't care if you don't like what I'm doing. Kick rocks means nothing to me. If you like what I'm doing, that's awesome, but I'm not going to change what I'm doing because some stranger on the internet doesn't approve. Talk to you later. Bye.